Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Washington, D.C., it's Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio. Now, here's your host, Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. Tonight, my very special guest is Phyllis Klein. Phyllis, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Great. I'm so glad that you're with me tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. And my very first question to you is, what is poetry?
You know, Michael, I thought you might start with something a little hard. So I'm glad I had a chance to think about this question because it was, I just kind of felt like a deer in the headlights when I first tried to answer it. So here's what I did. I wrote a poem about it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to read that to you.
All right.
And the poem is called On the Question of What is Poetry? Is it the interaction between the mind, the world, its images, colors, shapes, sounds? Mind interacting with breath and spirit? The conscious and unconscious on a boat with their ancestors? The mind on a suspension bridge connecting with emotions, nothing censored? What it feels like to create a sand castle with words? The question that has a line break, a stanza, an assonance. The question, the quest. That's it.
Wow, very nice, very nice, very nice. Tell me about generating that poem.
I did not think about it at all. Well, I looked at the question and I opened my mouth to say something and nothing came out. Because I just could not figure out what is poetry. So then the only thing that came to me was to write it from a poetic point of view, and use images and similes and metaphors to try to figure it out.
All right. Well, now that we know what it is, from a very creative perspective,
okay.
because it is subjective, why is it important? Why is it important?
Oh, well, so that's also, there's probably a really short answer to that. And I wish I could give that to you. I kind of have a longer answer.
Okay.
Which is that it's really powerful, and it can change the way that so it might feel like, oh, it's hardly anything, or what does it matter, or what does it mean? And you can look at it that way, but if you read poetry much and if you write it, then you start to come into this sense of power about it. It's like a fire. It starts a fire, or it can, and it can actually change the way you see yourself or the way you see the world. And if you think about a poem that's been a really special poem to you, then maybe you can understand what that's like. So, I don't know if you have a poem like that that changed you when you read it, or it opened you up in a certain way.
Yes.
And so that experience, a lot of people find that with Mary Oliver or Rumi or Pablo Neruda. We all wish that we could write like that, yeah? But it just blows you into a different world. It could be awe, it could be dread, it could be sorrow or joy. So those are some thoughts about it.
All right. As you think about your own work, what are some of the predominant themes?
Well, so I try to be pretty wide-ranging in my work, Michael, and it's really interesting how the unconscious works, because I believe that that's really happening when you write poetry. And so it seems that as I go along, the more that I write, it seems to be that there are two themes that come up for me. One is the news, and the other is trauma. So now it's no surprise to me that I write about trauma, because my day job is as a psychotherapist.
Yes.
And as many people know, sometimes people who become psychotherapists also are trying to cope with their own trauma.
Yes, correct.
So, yeah. And I believe that everyone experiences trauma throughout life. You cannot avoid it. And so as far as the news stories, I find that when I read the news, it's so interesting to me, and that the ideas and connections are rather endless. So it gives me just a constant stream of things that I really find so interesting that I can continue to write about.
All right.
And then, yeah, okay.
No, please continue.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So let's see. As far as the trauma poems go, some of them are public and a lot of them are private. And I think that's really important for people to understand that if you write something that's very personal, you're really writing it for yourself, I think, first and foremost. And the healing comes from what you're doing right with yourself on the page. And then from there, the sharing of it, if it helps you to heal further, or perhaps it might even help somebody else heal. You don't know. So that would be the hope. If it does, then you've really accomplished a lot, I feel.
You Phyllis, share so much information in such a clear fashion. Do you teach it as well? Do you teach poetry as well?
Well, I'm a poetry therapist, so I've learned how to use poems to help people write and help people connect to their emotions and share those with other people. So thank you for saying that. I hope, I try to be clear and as much as I can.
All right. Beautiful. Well, please share one of your works.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Where to begin? Well, let me say I'd like to read some things from my new book, which is called The Full Moon Herald. And Herald has a double meaning. So Herald is a messenger from with a bugle, who's giving us some news. And then there's also the herald of a newspaper, which is like the Herald Tribune. So my book has those two meanings. And it is actually a newspaper in poetic form. And so the chapters of the book are divided into news sections as you would find in a newspaper. And I'll read you the very first poem in the book, which is from the international news section, which is the first section you'd usually find in a newspaper as well. So this is called It Should Be Me Who Is Looking After You. And it's about letters from the dead in Taiwan. Only the night before execution are they given a pen and paper to say what will be unseen for decades. He takes the pen, writes the message to his unborn child. Before long, I will leave this earth. His wife feels their child inside her. All she knows is his disappearance, the emptiness. Alas, last to be unable to see you, to hug you, to kiss you once. The child arrives. Her father is part of a flock of magpies. I am heartbroken, he says. My regret is unending. All she knows is her father is not there. All she knows is nothing. For 60 years she knows not a thing until the letter arrives. Another takes his pen, writes a message to his son. On this earth you will never see your father again. His father is a tawny owl on a blue oak branch. This is the saddest thing, he tells him. The son is lonely. You must not forget your father. This man writes to his mother, your son believes that people who die have a spirit. She feels him near her like a robin flying through an open window. Your son is determined to come to your side every day to keep in touch. She feels the draft of wings on her face, to see your peaceful eyes, to make sure you eat 3 meals a day. So many days, so many years later, the letters arrive. The words fly off the paper to settle on teardrops, tiny lanterns drifting.
That's it. Same.
It's over.
Wow. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
What was an early experience where you learned that poetic language had power?
Well, I think the first time I discovered a Rumi poem, that probably is what did it for me. And I wish I had one to pull up to read to you. I know there's one that ends with, there are so many ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There's something about Rumi that just brings out this feeling of that somebody understands you, somebody gets you in this super deep way that is just so it just connects on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual, personal.
Well, you know, all great writers, and I'm including you in that list, have great writing. You have great writing influences. Who are some of yours? We talked about Rumi. Who are some of yours, and what makes them great in your eyes?
So I thought a lot about that, and I think what I want to start off with saying is that I've been trying to get to know more of the local authors who live nearby, and people who are reading. Now we're doing a lot of Zoom readings, and there's so much activity. More people are coming to readings because you don't have to go anywhere. You can just access right in your living room. And so just recently, just yesterday, I went to a reading where a poet by the name of Michael Warr, and that's spelled W-A-R-R, and I believe he lives in San Francisco. He read from his book that has to do with poetry of protest, and it was absolutely breathtaking. Another poet I heard was Hugh Bem Steinberg, who read at another reading, and it was just absolutely wonderful. I have friends who are amazing poets, Lisa Rosenberg, David Cummings, Christine Cummings, and then a poets laureate in California, Molly Fisk. I have my teachers, Rosemary Watola-Traumer, my mentors, Paul Ferracano, Jack Riddle, Perry Longo, who was my poetry therapy mentor and also helped me with poetry. So, and then I could go on from there to people that we've all heard of, yeah. So, but I kind of really like recognizing people that there's so many that we don't know about, and they're all, it's just amazing.
Well, let me ask you, as you think about the formation of a poem, and you've had the training, how does a poem begin for you? With an idea, a form, or an image?
It's really all of those. I think form would not be my starting place. I'm not. I'd like to do more with form. So that's on my bucket list.
Yes.
But my true confession that I will tell you, and I guess I'm telling more people than just you, is I love the computer wallpaper images. I have an app that has limitless numbers of images. They're really beautiful. And I find pictures that I like and I put them on my computer screen, and then those will seep into a poem, or maybe more than one. So that happened once with some sand dunes. I found a picture of sand dunes, and then I wrote a poem about death, as it could be a trip into a snowdrift. And then another time I found a series of fantasy images that made their way into a poem that was honoring somebody who had died. So, yeah.
No, I'm just amazed. I mean, there's a site called Pixabay, Pixabay.com. It also has pictures to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that's how that's a little secret that I use. And then sometimes I come with an idea. So, like I say, today I really want to write about that news story that I heard. So I might try to enter it through a poem that I really love. I have spent an awful lot of time with Jack Gilbert doing that, Jack Gilbert poems. And now, I have a lot of poetry books, so I'll just pick one and then I'll read something, and sometimes that helps me enter into it when I'm thinking about writing. And then sometimes I'll do research also. So, and usually, though, I do not think through every word or stanza. I really try to write very freely and allow the words to flow. And I've been very fortunate that has not been hard for me. So that seems to be something that just happens. I mean, of course, poems don't always come in their finished form. And there's a lot of editing involved, but the flow, the joy of writing and just having it flow out of you, and that focusing and concentration process is really something that I treasure quite a lot.
Well, please share another piece of your work.
Okay, I will. So I'm going to read the next poem in my book, which relates to the first poem. So the first poem was a story in the New York Times that came from these letters being released into the news from families in Taiwan whose family members have been executed by the White Terror regime for being political, for speaking out politically. So I spent quite an effort to try to figure out how to get the copyright to put these poems in my book. And one of the things that I did was I called Hong Kong to talk to the reporter who actually wrote the article, and he's mostly a photographer for the New York Times, for their Asian bureau.
Yes.
So this poem is called Crossing the Waters, and it's for Billy Kwok, who is the reporter. The evening I called Hong Kong It was warm for February in San Francisco. You were in the morning sun, me in the fading light. Your voice on the phone, not a message, such a surprise. You answered. I didn't know what to say, as if I were in a slot canyon on a river, in a boat, seeing the narrows ahead, instead of on the phone. You answered, your greeting so respectful, my canyon opened up, changed its geography. I wish I had thought to thank you first of all for your article in the New York Times. How small I felt, still, and tongue-tied. But I heard myself telling you about the poem I wrote because your words opened a channel in me. A passage from California to Taiwan, the story about letters from the dead, political prisoners executed for speaking out, given a pen and a paper to write farewells the night before their deaths. Their letters buried in a drawer, a cabinet, a word-lined grave. What would it feel like to excavate such a letter, to see your father's or grandfather's handwriting 60 years later? I try to imagine. None of my relatives in prison, none executed by a government for thought crimes. No authorities telling them to write farewells to their families. Nothing waiting for me in a pile of papers in an office suffused with the dust of decades. And yet, there is no corner on the market of suffering. I asked you who owned the letters because I needed permission to put them in my book. Messages from a graveyard of narrow rivers. Who owns them? Who owns anything? From haggard landscapes to tributaries of nourishment. Imagine the currents of words lost for so long, and finding you. Does it give me hope? Does it heal me somehow? That's the end.
Mm. So would you view your work as being found poetry?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you explain?
Yes, that's where you go out. If you read something, you take it and you write it as a poem. And you research it to find out the author of it. And you put it in a poetic form.
I guess so then, yeah. I call it, what I call it is poetic conversation.
Yes. I've been reading about found poetry because I'm attempting to write some myself. So I'm fascinated by your conversation. Well, let's take a brief break and we'll be right back. Okay. All right?
All right, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Anthony Ingram. I'm here with Phyllis Klein. The calling number is 646-787-1631. Phyllis, poets hail from all over the world. Where do you hail from?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I spent my childhood and high school up until high school in Long Island, in the suburbs, and then I moved to Albany. Then I moved to Michigan to go to grad school for social work, and then I moved to California. And I've been in California for over 30 years now.
Wow. how has your travels or your life in terms of where you've lived, how has that influenced your work?
I think that I moved. I really moved because I was I needed to kind of find my own path, and so a lot of the moves were providing distance between where I grew up. As you might have noticed, I kept going a little further away.
Yes, you did.
And in the middle of all that, when I was in college, I spent my junior year in Israel, so that was really far away. And I think that influenced me a great deal to get that far away, and also to be in that place that was very stimulating and exciting to me at the time, and influenced me a great deal.
Well, they say that to see the world with a complete honesty, one should look to comedians, artists, and poets. What do you think, as you think about your work, emerges naturally from your work? What emerges from you?
Well, I think that it's somebody, one of my mentors, Jack Riddle, told me that that he thinks my poetry has been a search for authenticity. And I do. When he said that, it just really connected with me. This quest for authenticity and honesty, and speaking your truth, which you may not start out really even knowing what your truth is.
Yes.
You may not know yourself. And so that sense of finding yourself and then being able to express it with clarity and directness and honesty, I think that's it's very healing. That's really where I am.
Well, please share another piece of your work.
Okay. So I think maybe I'll go to something that is has a little more of that authenticity and honesty in it.
Yes.
So give me a moment to find something.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Oops. I had everything all marked off. Let's see. Okay, so here's one. This poem, I believe this poem is honest because it starts off with something that is actually a positive and kind of happy moment, and then it ends up in a very dark place, and so I believe that that's important to have the range of things that we experience as human beings in my poetry. So there's hope in my poetry, and there's also this darkness, which I think comes from trauma, and trauma in the world. And so this poem is called Food Chain to Stardom. And let me just say that the Major Deegan is an expressway in New York City that you'll hear in this. That you'll hear the name of that. So I wanted to explain it to you.
All right.
Okay. Food chain to stardom. The calf runs north on the expressway, escaping consumption in a hungry city. Taken into custody, he is dubbed Major Deegan. Moments of celebrity in the twittering human circus. A number of farm animals showing up on New York streets lately. A lamb, 2 goats, and now this cow child. Once rescued, they are named, live on in sanctuary, unlike their relatives not clever enough to escape the slaughter. Does my steak have a name? 2 years ago, a bull escaped to York College in Jamaica, Queens, was rescued. Last year, another died on the way to sanctuary, alone at the back of the custom van, cold, broken. That's it.
Mm. Cold and broken.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that last line, cold and broken.
Mm. Well, it just wanted to be like that. In Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, is it Tigger who asked Pooh, well, why did you write that line like that? And he said, well, it just wanted to be that way. That's how it came out.
Okay.
And something about this that one cow that didn't get rescued, that died, it just stuck with me. It was so sad and so alone. And I know that many of us feel that way.
Yes,
and
so true.
That's what I feel, that's really honest, as opposed to keeping the poem in the celebrity of all these wonderful animals that got rescued. Yeah, that's what brought me into the story in the first place. It's a beautiful story. Mm-hmm. And I want all those animals to be rescued. However, I also eat meat. So, I'm a part of all that food chain.
Yes.
And sometimes people don't make it and animals don't make it. And that's a fact of our life as well. And I need that to be on the table. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for me to leave that off the table.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, writers and poets write for a myriad of reasons. Some write primarily to speak a message to their audience. Others write because to stay silent is not an option. Why do you write?
Maybe I already started to answer that. Let's see.
Yes.
So I think it's to express some of these really deep feelings that I have and to try to heal. Mm-hmm. It's just so important to me, and it kind of happened really naturally, without my having to force it. It kind of what needed to happen, and for me it was poetry.
Oh wow, it's beautifully stated. Well, please share another piece of your work. Share another piece of your work.
Okay. So you asked me for a poem that I feel really good about.
Yes, please.
And this one I think goes into that. Although I happen to like a lot of my poems. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm bragging.
No, not at all. That's one of my questions. Are there 3 pieces that you really feel as being your most? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the questions.
Yeah, you did sort of prompt me in that direction. So this poem is it's another news story. So it may be what you call a found poem.
Yes.
And the title is A Compassionate Judge at the Veterans Court. And the epigraph is, after sentencing Sergeant Joseph Cerna on a parole violation, Judge Lou Oliveira follows him into his jail cell. And so, when the judge gets into the cell with the man he has just sentenced to 24 hours in jail, the man asks for the whole day, and the judge says, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Like a father who says, he's my son, and I won't see him fall. and a son who isn't alone, locked down in the dark with his terror. Because the judge has been to war too and knows there are wounds that aren't visible. Because the man, 2 decades in the military, knows another soldier died for him in combat and lives crushed under this, and not only this. And a judge can be a brother to a man who has lost his way, as 2 oak trees in a meadow can be connected by their roots. The way a man who has lost his way can be a messenger to remind us there is so much more to know about what's on the inside, because we are so ready to skate on the surface of our minds, because we can do so much more to be relatives in the fields of trees, beauty, and devastation we call home. That's it.
I enjoy that poem as well.
Thank you.
Yes, I really like the line, "He's my son and I won't let him fall, won't see him fall."
Mm-hmm.
I really, really like that. That touches me.
Oh, thank you.
It touches me. You know, writers come up with words, as they do come up with words, but there's several words that they come up with over and over again, words or sentences that they just can't help but use in their work. What are 3 of your absolute favorite words to use?
Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. You know, I could probably, I know when I'm writing, there are certain words that I think of and I think, you know, I definitely have used this word more than once. But now that you're asking me, my mind is a complete and total blank. I actually have no idea. I'd have to go through and look at it and see. I could tell you more about the themes, though. If that would that work?
That will work.
Yes. So I think for me, the themes of my work are about loss, abandonment, rejection, hurt, betrayal. Those are all the traumatic themes, and of course grief. And then on the side of, some of the more hopeful types of things, I think appreciation would be there. Definitely appreciation. When I read a story like that about that judge, I just feel like I want to appreciate him in a formal way by kind of, thinking about what he did and then how that affected me. And then from there, I can deepen it into, well, what does that mean to me? And, a lot of the themes and the words that I use come from books that I've read. I read quite a bit of books on audio, and definitely when I was commuting to San Francisco twice a week, I could read through a lot of books just on my iPod. And so some of the themes of, how you choose books that matter to you or you don't really read them. So I read a book that had to do with trees and how trees speak to us and hidden language of trees. And that those themes and those words about trees have really, I think they've populated my poems quite a bit. For instance, in that judge poem, when I talk about the roots and how the roots of the it's right there. As 2 oak trees in a meadow can be connected by their roots. So that came to me from that book. And actually, I've written a number of poems about trees and connections. I have another one that I could read you right now.
Yes,
if you want.
I love that.
Okay. And let me find it. So that's also in my book. Let's see, is it in my book? Well, now I have to find it. Let's see. Well, I may have to come back to that.
Okay, not a problem.
Because I'm not finding it right at the minute.
Well, to me, everything that you mentioned in terms of, I'm going to view it as being the yin and yang of life, is present in what we see out in the world today in terms of the protests, the good, bad, and indifferent of it. I really believe that. So what do you view as being the role of a poet in modern-day society?
Well, I think poets have a really important role to play, actually. And I think as we find with the pandemic, and now what's happening with the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests, I think that poetry and poets are coming forward to be able to give a voice to these amazing things that are happening, both gut-wrenching, terrible, and beautiful, and actually even connect and braid those things together. And poetry can do that better, I think, than any other form of creativity. It just speaks to us in so many levels. It speaks to us from our mind. It speaks to us in our body. It goes deep into your feelings and your connection with yourself and your and into your soul. It can go really, really deep. So, and I feel that this is a time that we really need poetry. We always need poetry, but especially right now, it's and I think we might all be noticing how people are craving poetry, and we're all joining together to want to read it more, to want to hear it more. It's coming up more on the radio. It's coming up in the newspaper. It's coming up online on social media. It's just everywhere.
Well, speaking of everywhere, what I'd like you to do is to share another piece of your work.
Okay.
Because I want your work everywhere. I want your work everywhere.
Thank you. I wish I could find that one about the trees, but maybe at the next break I'll look for it. Yeah. If there's going to be another break. So I'll share this one. Okay. All right. Great. So I'll share this one. This is a poem about connection that had to do with It was that I went to the lab to get my blood drawn, and I had a conversation with the phlebotomist, and it brought this whole series of connections that I find so amazing and interesting. The synchronicity that also is another thing for me in that poetry can do, and braid our lives together in a certain way. So, and if I don't use the word braid, especially as a word, I'm thinking about braiding a lot when I'm writing. Okay. So this poem is called Phlebotomy, and it's for Jack Riddle. He introduces himself just before the needle. My name is Rodell, he says, after my dead brother Rodelio. I offer my arm and the blood slips into his vials, 2 needed this time. My brother died at 3 months, he said, 50 years ago in the Philippines, my only brother. I don't usually watch the red liquid from my body course into the tube. Today I want to see it fill up the ampules that will bear it to the lab. Is it thick as the blood between these Asian brothers? I asked him, was there a reason he told me this today? How he couldn't have known about you. You're also lost brother. The poem you sent me just an hour before. Your brother dead in the womb so many years ago. the brothers neither of you would ever have, both of you only sons. Rodell, 30, you past 70. How the two of you became friends through my blood. My blood on the way to the lab, coagulated into numbers of discovery, useful information, possible hope. Your brother's hemoglobin in your bodies forever. Blood brothers. Stories of possibility lost in the dirt of death. Sports never played, careers never found. No teaching how to throw a ball, how to lose your homework. How you both live on in their shade, their voices whispering about what could have been. My blood on the way to its future, all blood transfused with the ways of our losses, our passage. That's it.
Wow. You became friends through blood.
Mm-hmm. Through my blood, right?
Through your blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Your
what
book.
a way. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, I'm just
I
excited.
was
Go
just
ahead.
saying, what a way to experience getting a blood draw, right?
Oh, that's so true.
You know, I hope to take that with me the next time because it always unsettles me to go get my blood drawn.
Mm-hmm.
And this story, this whole experience was so touching to me. It really deeply connected me to both of those people, one of whom I really don't know very well at all.
Yes. Well, what I'd like to know is more about your book,
Oh, okay.
The Moon Herald.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to convince a friend or colleague to read your book, what might you tell them?
Well, I would say that it has something in it for you. Maybe I'll try to convince you, Michael.
Okay, please.
Even though you
okay.
may have already looked at it, yeah? So, Michael, Michael, here's why, and this is something I would never actually really do. So you're giving me permission, you're opening up something that actually I would be too embarrassed and feel really shy to ever do this. So so maybe once I've done it, you can do it, right? Because I don't know if I'll ever do it again. So Michael.
Now I'm afraid.
Oh, don't be afraid. I'm going to be really nice to you.
Okay.
What I think you might get from my book is feeling the way that that your place in the family of humanity, and I say that as a way to think about that the news and what's happening in the world is something that may feel very foreign to us. I know it certainly does to me. If I read a news story, especially if it upsets me, I feel powerless. I feel helpless. Sometimes I feel really good about it if it's a really heartwarming story, or I might feel really sad. But I don't necessarily feel that connected to it or feel like I can do something about it to express my own point of view or feel like I matter. So I think maybe reading my book might give you a sense, Michael, that you matter, because maybe it's going to help you think about the news that you've read, or the news of your life, or the news of people you know, or the news about feelings that you have that then you might become more connected to, and maybe that will give you a sense of empowerment or hope, or maybe even a connection to a feeling that you didn't realize you had. Wow. So that's what I might say.
That's amazing. I already feel connected to the book.
Well, good. And you know,
purchase it because they may find the same connection.
Well, it might, it might make
Yes.
you angry. It might make you also, it might hurt. And I think that's really a part of life, is that things hurt. And if we don't name them, and if we don't speak to them and look at them directly in the eye, it can fester. So that's another reason to try to understand, maybe there's a way of approaching these things. If you could write about it or read somebody else's writing about it, read what somebody else thinks about it, maybe, maybe that's going to give you a little more of a sense of what can be done, what can be done with the pain. Because especially now, there's so much grieving that we all have to do. And it's only just beginning. It will happen more, I think, when the pandemic is over, if it ever gets over. But that's when the grieving is going to hit us even harder. So we need to know how to manage some of these feelings. That's what I think.
It's beautifully stated. Let's take a brief break and we'll be right back. Truly a pleasure for me to interview you.
Oh, thank you.
It really is. Would you share another piece of your book?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that poem. I'm going to look for another minute.
Okay.
And then if I can't find it, I will.
Well, of course, I'm going to invite you back. I'm going to invite you back so you can recite it the next time you're on the air.
Oh, well, that takes all the pressure off. Well, great. That is just so beautiful. Thank you.
You'll be back.
Here it is. I just found it.
Wow, that's great.
Okay, all right. Well, so now let me just preface again by saying that this poem came from the book about trees. I think it's called The Secret Life of Trees, and I might even be able to get you the author. Peter Wohlleben. I think is he Dutch or German? Yeah. So he has these amazing ideas about trees. The trees talk to each other through their roots. That they have all kinds of systems and community. They warn each other of danger by sending out like a substance that tastes bad, so that if somebody is if an animal is attacking them or eating their leaves. Oh, okay, it is in my book. Okay, I just couldn't find it. It's in the book review section. What do you know?
All right.
Okay, so it's called Life in the Slow Lane. After reading Peter Wohlleben, The Hidden Life of Trees. Hold me in your branches, and I will speak to you through our roots, intertwined in our bed, our bedroom of orchids, our kitchen window redwood, our rooms connected like living telephone wires, our bodies, our pheromones singing arias, the microbes who call us home, riding on our backs into the jungle of our city. Let us be silent like the trees, endure pain with dignity, leafy or bare, dressed or naked, Be patient for the ecstasy of life, patient for the ice, the wind, patient for warmth. Let us give space the way trees grow their branches so light reaches every leaf of every tree. Welcome cats, birds, monkeys, and snakes. Welcome. And let us endure leaf-eating pests and mammals, mold, rot, drought, and flood. Let us make seeds and cones to fly on winds of longing, seeds to fly into us as we hold each other, as we speak through our roots, the soft, damp sky filled with birds calling. That's the end.
I can see why you were interested in my poem. I can see the tops of trees.
Oh, yes.
From
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
wow.
So there we go. There's some synchronicity there, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
Phyllis.
Michael.
What do you want your poetry to do? Where do you want it to go?
Oh, I'm just really hoping that people will get something out of reading it. You know,
Okay.
that's the most important thing to me. If it helps somebody, that would be really so valuable to me. Of course, you know, I want, you know, I want people to find a way to connect with it and maybe write some poetry of their own that would come from reading my poetry. That would be the greatest gift of all.
That's beautiful. Share one more, please. We're almost out of time, but please share one more.
Oh, that went so fast. Okay. So let's see. What's a good one to end on?
Like this glass? Or the brass band?
I'm thinking of ending on something that's really that's hopeful. And this poem also came from a newspaper article and had to do with homeless people. The poem is called Holding a Place for Human Kindness to Go. Strangers, until the homeless man moves into the rancher's apartment, the one he decided to build on his land, generous with California oak woodlands, with coastal sage scrubs. The rancher wonders, why doesn't everyone do this? He doesn't realize it is greatness to see potential when everyone else sees menace, those immigrants invading like Mediterranean grasses, Spanish broom, yellow star thistle. Weed them out, those seekers, or the downtrodden, down-thrusted, the ones bereft of four walls, invading the city, choking out the libraries, the beaches. And the homeless man who has a roof now doesn't realize his life is a poem when he says, living on the streets takes your dignity away. How his life was on the edge of felling, so much like a weed in a garden he could pluck out himself. And now he lives in a new home on a ranch near a person who takes a risk, digs a foundation, offers the horses, the owls, the steelheads, also endangered. That's it.
Wow. You know, I'm sure when people hear your work, I'm sure they want more. What's next for you as a poet?
Well, you know, I really would like to spend some time enjoying this accomplishment.
All right. All right.
Before I try to write another book. I mean, so a lot of people are asking me about the next book. And,
yes.
You know, I really want to keep writing. So the main thing for me is to keep finding new ways to express myself, and maybe new themes and pathways that will open up. And to that end, I'm constantly taking classes, studying, learning, reading. So I guess the idea, what I want is to keep going, for as long as I can. That would be such a gift to me. I've discovered my book is coming out. I'm in my 70s now, and my early 70s, I should say.
All right.
My book is coming out at a time in my life where, a lot of things are slowing down, just physically, although I'm doing fine, but, I would like my writing to keep accelerating. It's just such a gift to me. I just, it's just the most amazing thing that I can be doing for myself.
I should share with you that you're already on my list of all-time favorite guests.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, I hope you don't say that to everyone.
No, actually, you're the very first person I've ever said it to. So.
No, thank you so much. You are such a gift. I really mean this so truly, that what you're doing, it's such a gift to us as poets, because sometimes it feels like it's hard to find people, especially in the publishing world, who really want to listen or care. That can sometimes feel rather discouraging, to say the least.
Yes. Well, is there any advice, and as we'll conclude on this question, any advice that you would give aspiring poets?
Find a group to read to. Know that what you're writing is really terrific, and that wherever you are, even if you don't think your writing is very valuable, that is so not the truth. I mean, so the idea that with a little bit of exposure, with a little bit of connecting with other people, you might be able to take your poetry to a whole new level that would really surprise you. And that you have a voice that is so special and so important. And sometimes it just feels really hard to open it up and speak about it.
Yes, I understand.
And just, as a metaphor for that, I'll just say that I was feeling really discouraged about my ability to speak because I've had a lot of hoarseness in my voice.
Yes.
And today, so just along those lines, I met a voice coach. She's actually a singing coach. And do you remember her last name?
Mahoney.
Molly Mahoney. She's a San Francisco based, or San Francisco Bay Area opera singer. And within an hour, she took my voice from something really that was just so depressing to me to a place where I could open it up. And it just completely shocked me. Now, I don't know how I'm sounding tonight.
Clear as a bell.
Of course, I really have. Thank you. I have a long way to go to improve, but that was so astonishing to me that could happen in that amount of time, and I think that is really true for so many people. But we tend to feel isolated and alone.
Yes.
And so that's the message that I would like to leave everybody with.
Well, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank
for
you.
being a guest on my show. I'd like to invite you to come back where we can spend more time focused on your book, where you have more of an opportunity to read more poems from your book.
Well, I won't refuse.
Well, with that, I say goodnight to you. I say goodnight to our listening audience. Until next week, take care.
Thank you again.
All right.
You have just listened to the Quintessential Listening Poetry Online Radio Podcast with your host, Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. And make sure to catch our next episode.